You ready? Good afternoon. Welcome. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. Those of you joining us from home, welcome. First on our agenda this evening, we have a couple presentations. The first one is regarding the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance Rally Cap campaign update. Who will be presenting that?
I'm here, Nick, for Doug Newman from the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance.
Welcome, Doug.
Mayor and City Council, thanks so much for having me here for a couple of minutes. I'll be brief, but I want to bring you up to speed on a pretty important initiative here for the regional economy and what we've been doing at the Economic Alliance. I'm sure most of you know of the Economic Alliance. We're here to create economic growth, population, workforce growth, and to help businesses succeed. And we really operate under kind of four core functions: the community development aspects, economic development, workforce things, business support, public policy, and of course do many of those things in great partnership with the City of Marion, with Medco, and with the Marion Chamber, and certainly appreciate all that we do together. Today, I specifically want to talk to you about Rally Cap. You'll see on your screens there the start of a community spirit campaign as part of really the economic development that we do, but also the business support and community development that we do. This is such a critical moment right now. Our economy has taken a gut punch. Businesses have taken a gut punch. This pandemic really created unprecedented economic times. And we do need to take action. Many small businesses especially are in a very critical moment where we need to rally consumer confidence, where we need to rally community morale, and really come to the support of those businesses and community attractions. I've often said to people, since we've been running this campaign about the last 30 days or so, think about the thing in your community that you would miss most if it were gone. Think about those things, and right now they need you. This is a critical moment for them right now. And this is really what Rally Cap is all about. We're trying to, the cap in Rally Cap, we're having a little bit of fun with this. It's a community spirit campaign that we're trying to, it's certainly serious business, what we're trying to do, but we are trying to make it fun. And the theme here is CAP stands for Champion and Protect. And the focus is on a local first mindset, local businesses, and also certainly on the arts and cultural attractions that are such a key part of our communities. Next slide, please. I've got just a couple slides I want to take you through. A big part of this is certainly working together and to save our local businesses. And why don't you move on to the next slide right away. The Economic Alliance is spending a lot of time and resources up front to try to get traction and to try to get a campaign that resonates with people. But there's only so much that we can do as your local nonprofit economic development partner. We're trying to create a campaign that resonates with a lot of people and gets a lot of participation from citizens, from small businesses, from restaurants, from arts and cultural campaigns, or arts and cultural attractions, and also one that doesn't supplant anything that you are doing. The City of Marion has been tremendous in terms of your community conversations, the things that you've taken virtual, the support that the Chamber has given, some of your very own community spirit campaigns, and even when you think about the slogan that you have of Reach Higher, this doesn't replace anything. It's meant to work in conjunction with everything. Meant to get people to think about champion and protect, meant to get people to think about let's rally to our local businesses. meant to get people to think about local first, and that this is such a critical moment in what we're doing. Next slide, please. Simply, this is kind of having some of the fun with the baseball theme. Those of you that know me well will find it no surprise that we wound up with a sports theme, and especially baseball. I'm a huge baseball guy, and I'm glad that we landed on something where we can kind of use our puns and our analogies about this. But again, the Economic Alliance is sort of serving as the head coach. We're getting this going. We're using our own funding to try to do some digital advertising, to try to do billboards and traditional media, and do a lot of outreach like this. We're trying to talk to communities and service clubs, but we also have local leaders and influencers. I believe both Mayor Nick and Nick Glue are both part of our base coaches, and I know they've had some fun with a little video that they've done, and thank you very much, guys, for playing along with us and helping use your circle of influence to help rally to the cause, to help people understand how important this is. We've got some volunteers, some youngsters that are just having fun with this, and they're out and about distributing caps and distributing jerseys and doing a lot of other things. And then, of course, the business community, passionate community members. It's a very wide-ranging campaign that by its very nature is trying to be very inclusive and get everybody involved. Next slide. I think I've got just a couple more for you. One of the fun components, and this is only part of it, but it is kind of the interactive component. We now have more than 100 participating businesses at which you can collect rally cards. It's just a little business card that says, yes, I went to a local business, a local restaurant, one of our arts and cultural businesses, attractions, and here's proof that I was there. You collect 5 of those, you get your very own cap. Later in the campaign, we want to try to give out jerseys, stickers. There's a lot of other things that just try to get that unifying message to this entire region about the importance of that. Our the website that we created for this, rallycapchallenge.com, also has a list of businesses where we can focus on the business-to-business relationships. Members of the Economic Alliance, we're trying to say, look at your supply chains, look at your entire business model, and are there places where you can shift business spending to more local sources and try to help our recovery from this pandemic. Share with a lot of audiences. Marion's been great so far. I think we've got 15 or more Marion businesses now on that list. I know a number of businesses that are on that list as well have both Marion and Cedar Rapids addresses. There's some companies that have a footprint in both communities, so maybe 20 or more businesses in Marion that are already a part of this, giving out rally cards and having fun with the signage and kind of the theme. If you can flip to the last slide, it's just kind of a closing slide and lets me thank you, first of all, for the participation that you've already had in this campaign. Today's actually the 30th day since the launch of the campaign. And I want people to know that this is just starting. This wasn't just a quick moment in time where we are checking a box. We need a sustained effort here where we have a local first mindset, where we rally consumer confidence, where we bolster community morale, where we try to keep projects on track, try to not hit pause on things that can spur our economy. In the spirit of the fun of this and the baseball theme of this, as I talk to you more and continue the great partnerships that we have with Marion organizations and entities, please don't balk at your chance to step to the plate and hit a home run. And thanks so much for having me here briefly at the start of your council meeting tonight. take any questions or feedback, but otherwise just appreciate all that you do and the partnerships that we have with you.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you for all your work on this. Did anyone have questions for Doug? Is he still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Anyone have questions for Doug? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Doug.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yep. Okay, our next presentation is an update on the relocation of the brick houses. Is that development department or is that engineering?
Should be Kyle Martin.
Kyle? Okay.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Kyle.
All right. It looks like my video is hidden, but other way, wanted to give an update kind of on a broad level, and then happy to dive in down to the weeds where I'm aware of. Currently, we're let's see. I'll give a brief update of where we've been. So, Joe Hill, who's moving the houses, he's got his down payment to the house movers in the amount of $80,000 to get things authorized and moving. All the additions have been removed from the existing houses, and the utilities have all been disconnected according to the house movers requirements. We submitted for a foundation permit a few weeks ago, and then because the property lines weren't exactly where the original sandboard maps had indicated, it kind of put some of our setbacks in different locations where they were outside of tolerance for Dave Hockett to be able to just pass through. So you'll see that later on the agenda for the foundation site plan reapproval. And then pending approval of that on Thursday night at the council meeting, we should be able to have the foundation permit issued on Friday or shortly thereafter. And that will free us up to basically get the foundations going on the new site. And as that takes place, we'll be submitting for the permits for the official demolition permit required to pull the houses off, and the moving permit, which will set into place approvals for escort and dropping power lines and all the checklists associated with that. Let's see. In talking with Holly Trenery at the library, they've set a start date for the construction for that for October 1st. I've got a few questions to her as far as any sequencing around that particular date, if they're anticipating moving utilities or any previous demolition or groundbreaking ceremonies or anything like that, so we can hopefully be clear of the ground with the houses by then. We're working with the foundation contractor and the excavator to get the foundations in here as soon as we can, hopefully even as early as digging as early next week. And then and as well as closing up the holes after the foundations are removed and the house is relocated. So there's several dates still kind of up in the air, and there's a couple of durations that we're still working out with the house movers. There's been some durations given, but some of the activities within that duration, I'm hoping I can help expedite on the front end, like some of the permit approvals and things like that. So hopefully all they have to do is come in and do their work moving the houses, and all the paperwork and kind of coordination can be handled as quickly as possible, because we don't want anything that will hold up the library project ultimately. Let's see if there's anything else besides that I had on my list. Yeah, I think that's what I had on my list that I knew I needed to cover. If there's any questions, or if I need to go into more detail anywhere, I did create a bar chart schedule and sent that to Tom Treharn last Thursday of the understanding that I had at that moment. I've got a few more pieces, but I don't have an updated version of that quite yet. So.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Any questions for Kyle? I think that helps everyone to understand what needs to happen before the houses are moved. And I think the concern of people who just are wondering, because the library is moving forward with their planning and their building project, that we don't want that schedule to get ahead of the house moving. And I think understandably with COVID, everything's been delayed, but the expectation was that they'd be moved by now. So I think that helps answer some of the questions. Any additional questions from anyone? Yes, Steve.
Just a quick summation. I guess after all of those comments, I really did not hear a commitment, or he didn't go through a timeline, but is there a commitment and anticipation that there will not be any problem of having those two houses moved by October 1st? Is that the summation of everything you're talking about, Kyle?
I'd say the summation is that is absolutely the goal. Today I can't guarantee that, and hopefully come Thursday council meeting, there may at least be a background update for people that will either identify areas that I need to bring people together, or we've got confirmation that October 1st date is well in sight. So,
Okay.
like I said, I wish I knew just a little bit more today that would give us a little bit more satisfaction in the process, but hopefully we'll get there shortly.
Well, so let me ask this, Kyle. Once the city council approves the foundation or the site plan, is there any obstacle on the city's part, or is the rest of it?
I don't believe so, and that's where I think the typical timelines that I had been given several months ago by the home builder or by the home movers, they had given some very broad kind of durations that included a lot of approval processes, and because I think everyone is engaged and on board from the city, I think that will only get better in terms of timeline as we get those pieces together.
So you have the foundation permits, you have the moving and demolition permits. I mean, those seem to me like once there's agreement on the site plan and all of that those are. I mean,
those are the key pieces as far as council or most of the departments would have to work with. The house moving permit has some checklist processes as far as like escort of the moving through the streets and things like that, but that'll all go with that permit. That it's between me at this point and the departments to get, or not the departments, but whatever those entities be, if it's the power company or the police department or whoever, there's the coordination there. But like I said, at this point, it's pretty much just a couple of checklists that we need to get through from the city's perspective.
Okay. Thanks for joining us and updating everyone. Any questions? Yes, go ahead, Will.
I don't know if this is I guess isn't for Kyle, more for city staff, but
is your mic on?
yes.
Doesn't sound like. Make sure.
I can hear him.
Okay, go ahead.
Hopefully everything gets done in time for the October 1st groundbreaking for the library. But is there a contingency plan that is in place if it doesn't happen? Because we're over a year past these houses are supposed to have been moved already. And who owns the houses now? Have they actually been purchased by Mr. Hill? And are there anything in the agreement that we have in place with them that has any type of, what's the word I'm looking for? If he doesn't meet the timeline again and goes past it, is there anything like fines or anything in there for not doing what the agreement has written out? I don't know who wants to answer that, Lon or?
Yeah, there's a couple of stages to that. First is that the agreement that we have in place right now does grant access for purposes of the demolition and everything that Kyle was talking about, but it also actually expired on June 30th. As the council may remember, we had an original agreement that went through the end of last year that we then extended to go through June 30th of this year. So we'll have to bring back another amendment to that for the council to approve. And I was looking at that at having an end date of September 30th because I understand that there might be some desire to bend the library project to allow these homes to be moved, but I would strongly remind the council that we're a year past when we thought this was going to be done, and we're also at a point where, you know, delays in the library project could have an impact of hundreds of thousands of dollars to bottom line costs. So we're coming up to a point where there really isn't room to do additional contingency planning. They just have to be moved.
Okay.
So, well, what happens if they're not? What's the contingency plan if they're not?
We did ask engineering to reach out to the contractor. If the council might remember, when we bid this, we bid for demolition and or relocation or reuse proposals, and the council accepted the reuse proposal, but we did have a demolition number at that point. And so we were going to be contacting the bidder to see if they would still honor that if need be.
And then my other question there was who actually owns the houses? Does the city still own the houses?
We still own the properties, yeah. They have not been transferred.
And is there anything in the agreement that now is expired again that has any penalties for not following through? I'm assuming not.
I will have to pull it up and look at it.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Grant.
So I guess the question or the concern that I have, and it's dovetailing with what Will was asking about, it appears we have two community important projects that are intersecting with their critical paths for the projects. And I think what I would be interested in as this goes forward is periodic updates about the critical milestones for the movement of the two homes, as that then influences the critical milestones for our opportunity to break ground on October 1st. I think it would be useful just to see the progress on a periodic basis, just to be sure that we're not running ourselves into a problem condition that then we need to be thinking about some of the very same things, Will, that you were just talking about. So I guess in sum, distilling that down, I think I'd like to see some form of schedule for leading up to the move of the homes, coupled with any critical interface points with the library project, which maybe that's a simple milestone, and that is break ground.
So, and if I may, I don't mean to interrupt, but to get back to Councilman Brandt's question about whether or not there are penalties in there. One thing I would say is that this agreement does stipulate that the houses have to be moved. It has a $100,000 economic development grant component. So any expenses or anything that would have incurred if the project is not completed, that money does not get spent. So there's a significant contribution that the city would make directly to the project that would not happen.
Yeah, so I think the money already invested in the project is the penalty if it doesn't happen. And I know that Mr. Hill is working very hard to make this happen. You have another question, Will?
Lost it.
Oh, sorry. Anyone have other questions while Will tries to remember his question?
Your Honor, this is Holly, Library Director.
Hi, Holly.
Hi, I was switched over to panelist. just so you know, I representing the library board on this issue. I just want to say thank you to Kyle for putting together a schedule. I had requested that we have one. The library board had requested that we have one by today. And he was really quick to get that to us early last week. And just to kind of respond to Councilman Harper, we are working on those contingencies from a library perspective and working with the city and with Kyle. We are worried about those durations that Kyle mentioned as well. And so I feel like we have a solid contingency plan that I've worked on with the city staff on what will happen if they don't move by the date that we need them to move. I am a little bit concerned about a September 30 date because we don't have any turnaround time. If we set the date to September 30th, we don't have any time to react to that. But I just wanted to speak on behalf of the library board that there is a lot of concern with the schedule that we currently have. And we're just working really hard with the city to come up with a contingency at this point due to our, with so many answers still unclear as Kyle continues to work through his schedule.
So Holly, can I ask you, with the schedule that you've seen then, you said you still have concerns? So that the schedule is not?
Yeah, so I don't know if Kyle has that. He shared a schedule with us last week that had a lot of holes. There's, we're waiting to get back some information on the duration. We learned that the houses are gonna move one at a time, not at the same time. We're not sure what the duration of each move is gonna be. They have to use the same equipment for each house. You know, as you start to put in those durations, we don't have durations from Kyle on those individual items in the schedule. We just have some holes that he's still working to get us, as he mentioned earlier. And so right now our confidence level on meeting that feels like kind of a little, with all due respect, Kyle, I think you were saying you're a little shaky on making that commitment, and we're a little shaky on our confidence to his commitment. And so we're definitely talking. I appreciate that we're all around the table having the conversation. But as of last Thursday, I don't think any of us walked away with any level of confidence that that schedule is going to hit October 1.
Okay, well, appreciate you sharing that.
I remember my question.
And I do appreciate that everyone's talking and working together to try to make it work. Yes, go ahead, Will.
100%.
So it was brought up that there was a schedule, and there was a schedule shared with Holly, apparently. What is that schedule? What's the date that you've got tentatively in place for being done and holes filled and out of there? Kyle.
I don't know if I'm able to share my screen. I could kind of give that. It says I cannot at the moment. I don't know if that can be possible.
Okay.
Give it a try.
Go ahead and try, Kyle.
All right. Let's see. Let me get the right screen. I think this is it. Okay. So here's the schedule that I had sent to Holly and Tom and Mike Barkalow. And it's probably difficult to read, so I'll kind of wave my cursor and doodle over it as we go. So today we are right here, and moving forward, pending approval of that site plan on Thursday, we should be ready to receive a building permit Friday or shortly thereafter. And in the course of that, we're going to try and get the excavator mobilized and get the excavation going and get the foundation formed and poured. And right now, with the holiday, I haven't been able to get back with the excavator to really confirm dates on that. If that short-term mobilization is ready. But moving forward from there, like I've confirmed with the foundations that it'll take about a week to get those formed up and poured. And then I've got a minimum kind of curing time of a week for the foundations themselves until the houses are ready to actually physically be set on top of them. And then that's where the big question marks and holes are. So there's this period here that the house mover early on had described as permitting and clearance period. So basically applying and attaining the demolition or house moving permit and getting the street closures set up and things like that. And what I'm hoping is that we can take this period and essentially move it back to here. And that would save us a good 3 or 4 weeks potentially, so that when we actually go to move house number 1, that gets moved to this area. The other big hole is the actual duration of an individual house move. I've assumed a few days for setup, a day or 2 to move, and then a few days for tear down, and then essentially repeat the process for house number 2. So that's where I'm looking for more detail as well. If in their period they have assumptions about, additional requirements or having to close the street twice and things like that, that I think we all agree that we can work those things out and hopefully alleviate the house movers' concern for any of those things. Because essentially over here is October 1st. So with only approximately 2 weeks of 2 to 2.5 weeks, if we really get tight, that there's cause for concern if any of these bleed out a week in either direction. So if we can condense or shift forward this period and then make sure that the 2 house moves themselves occur as smoothly as possible, then we've got a shot. And so these are the 2 things that I'm working hardest on right now to confirm that we can keep these as short or move them up wherever possible.
Yes, Will.
Kyle, is everything at the houses done so that they're ready to be moved? Right away. Nothing they have to wait
Yeah, no,
for.
they pretty much as soon as the house mover is ready, they could poke the holes in the foundations and set their beams pretty much any day now. And then it's just a matter of the street closures and things that weren't going to be ready until the foundation permit was ready to go. So the house moving permit should follow very, very closely behind, and that I don't anticipate that being much of an issue.
And then I assume it's a different contractor that's going to be cleaning up the site once the houses are moved. So no wait. Okay.
Yeah, so on each of the sequence of the house moves, we've got basically the house gets moved here, and then there's a little space here, and that goes for both. And that's basically a placeholder for the excavator going back, filling the holes, and a geotechnical engineer testing for compaction to meet the library design needs.
Your Honor, may I ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
Ms. Kyle, one thing I'm not seeing on the schedule that we talked about was the tuck pointing that is going to be required. That we do, my understanding is there has to be a tuck pointing. And then secondly, I'm just pointing out hopefully the start and end duration of the house move. Do you actually know how many days it actually takes to move the house? So those are my 2 questions. What about the tuck pointing? And 2, are you assuming these dates for the move, or are these the dates that we got from the movers?
The tuck pointing, it's real, and that's been clarified. It's really more any structural brick repair, and that would happen. Let's see. That will happen conceivably this week here. We do have the contractor for that lined up. It's not reflected in this schedule, but I do have it in my updated schedule. That's work in progress. And that's my biggest point of concern is we do not have these dates perfectly set because this duration has not been set and clarified yet. So that's what I'm hoping. And if it weren't a holiday weekend, I probably would have had those answers last Friday as opposed to hopefully tomorrow. So
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
So there's tuck pointing that needs to be done on the houses, so they're not ready to move.
It's relatively minor repair. Basically where the additions were pulled off, there's a few holes that the house movers want patched prior to, and there's a few cracks that need to be pointed just to ensure that it's stable. But overall, they still have cabling and things that they tie the house together before they lift it.
Colette, did you have a question?
I do.
Go
Yep.
ahead.
Just a question of clarification, Kyle. So you're working on dates and you believe you'll have more solidified dates on Thursday. Is that accurate? Did I hear that right?
I'm hoping so, yes.
Okay. So hopefully we'll have.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm using the word hope a lot more than I would prefer.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your diligence on it. I think there's a lot of understandable concern, and appreciate everyone doing their part to get this done. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. That was very helpful. Moving on with the consent agenda. There are a couple items marked on page 2. Before we get to those items, anything on the one item on page 1 or 2 through 6 on page 2? Anyone want to discuss anything? Yes, go ahead, Renee.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to talk about 1A1, which is the minutes.
Sure.
I received an email from a constituent who wanted to know why I had abstained those 7 times.
Yeah.
And I thought I had said it after the first abstention, but I want it reflected in the comments, the reason that I abstained. I remember saying it, I just don't remember if it was after the first time. I know I didn't do it in comments. I probably should have reiterated it. But the reason I had abstained from the 7 items was basically in protest to the process of receiving the items in less than 48 hours. It wasn't to the content. So I would like that reflected wherever you think it best so that I can vote yes to approve these on Thursday.
Okay. Can we do that?
I will figure out how to do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other items on 1 through 6 that anyone would like to discuss individually before we get to 7? Okay, number 7. Is that you, Rachel?
Yes.
Okay.
So Lynn County Elections reached out wanting to use City Hall as a polling location for the November 3rd, 2020 election. So that conflicts with the work session. So just wanted to get council's opinion if we should cancel that work session or reschedule it to that Monday prior.
So we would essentially merge the work session and the council meeting
If we
into
cancel the
Thursday?
work session, yeah. Otherwise, we could have the work session on that Monday and the formal session on Thursday.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts on that? Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Option 1. I'll vote for option 1.
Option 1.
I'm sorry, I can't vote. I'll give an opinion about option 1.
So you're in favor of just canceling the work session and doing work session and meeting on Thursday?
We've done it a few times in the past.
We've done that in the past, I know.
So-
Yeah. Yes, go ahead, Renee.
I will give the opposite opinion, and I would go for option 2, only because I feel like we cover a lot in the work sessions, and the more that we can shine light on public business, I feel like we should, instead of canceling a meeting.
Other thoughts? So we can reach a consensus on this? I guess I would agree with Renee of just rescheduling the work session. It's always good to have time to have things presented, ask questions, be able to think about things, do our homework. Not that we wouldn't be able to do our homework beforehand, but it's just once you get things clarified at the work session, then you can maybe think a little more with more information about it, and be able to do a little more homework so you can feel comfortable in how you're voting on Thursday. So that would be my opinion. But anyone else? Yes.
I would, if we were a month away from November 3rd and we had somewhat of a emergency reason to change how we're meeting, I would agree with you on that point, Steve, but I was sitting here in July. I think option 2 is the way to go, so we maintain the integrity of our deliberations.
Anyone else? Yes, Will.
I was kind of indifferent on that, but I think probably option 2 is the way I would go, even though it's my daughter's birthday on that Monday and I'll probably have to miss out on a family dinner or something, but hey, she's 22. It'll be 22, so it's not a milestone one.
Option 1 is fine.
One?
Or option 2,
Yep.
rather, yes, sorry, option 2
2?
is fine.
Okay.
Initially, I was with Steve, and then I think Renee made a good point about transparency, and so.
So I think we have a general
So
consensus.
I'll change the wording of the item for Thursday to reschedule it for that Monday.
Sure. Okay. And maybe we can get the word out well in advance that's been scheduled so the public knows. Or not maybe, we should. Get the word out well in advance. Thank you. Anything further on that item? Any other thoughts? Okay. Item 8, is there anything on item 8? Otherwise, we'll move on to parks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you, Mike?
Good. The resolution on the agenda for Thursday, it represents the final payment, Septagon Construction, for the Lau Park Maintenance Building project. The payment, the $5,600, is basically the held retainage on the project. I did note in the memo that I provided to council that the contract did come under budget a little bit by a little over $2,000. And basically that amount represents a few change orders that we had with the project. I did also want to note to the council that this is the first time that our department had worked with Septagon Construction. And I do want to say, as a general contractor, they were very good to work with, and they also provided very good subcontractors on the project. Overall, this project was budgeted at $370,000. Other project expenditures associated with the project were the design fees and project management assistance with Martin Gardner, the roadway construction that we did to this addition. We had said when we brought this project forward to the council that we would extend the trail because we were losing part of a trail to the existing trail. So we did do that as part of the project. There were the roadway lighting to do. then landscaping, seating, that type of finish work. The one outstanding item that we still have to do on the project is some tree planting for screening, which we will probably hold off to more towards fall for that. Overall, it's been a fairly smooth, small project for the department. Expenditures to date are about $364,000. We have, which leaves us with a remaining balance just a little bit over $6,000. So right now it looks like the project will come in under or within budget.
Great. It's always good to hear under budget. Any questions for Mike? Yes, go ahead, Renee.
Is Septagon out of Iowa? I'm just curious.
They have a presence in Iowa and northern Missouri. I believe northern Missouri is where their corporate offices are.
Thanks.
Will, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Mike, instead of listening to Seth on the Zoom meeting. And is this, we're getting close to your last meeting, is this?
We're getting closer.
Okay. I was wondering if that's why you showed up tonight, but.
No, that was not the reason.
Okay.
Actually,
Is it completed? Are you guys using it now? I mean, I haven't been out there forever.
Everything associated with the project and construction is completed. And again, this is a little bit of a dated picture. Everything is seated now in green. We had the roadway light. We contracted with Trail Electric for that, and that was put in about a week ago. So just wrapping up a few loose ends on it. Like I say, we're pretty much down to that tree planting, landscaping.
Nice.
Good addition.
Anxious to
out
come out and see it.
Well, I think the screening is important, so I'm looking forward to seeing that
Absolutely.
out there in that setting. So, okay. Other questions for Mike? Thank you very much. Okay, under engineering, page 2, and well, there's nothing marked under engineering in the consent agenda.
It's coming.
Yeah, wait until the regular agenda. Just any items that anyone would like to discuss under the consent agenda for engineering? Okay, what about community development? Items 1 through 5. Okay, for the next section, I will turn it over to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so under the consent agenda with Mayor Abu Asali's abstention, are there any items that anybody wishes to discuss? Okay, if not, we will move on to the regular agenda.
Okay, we have under administrative services, one item marked on page 6, which is number 1A.
This is back on the agenda from the last meeting. I think you all were updated. Cocktails and Company did not move forward with those first 2 events that were approved. And then Ryan Evans will be here, or will be talking on Thursday. He wants to talk to council about, I don't think he feels like he should have the amount of security that council and PD requested.
Okay. Any questions on that item? So he'll be here to address us on Thursday?
Yeah, I told him he can comment during the public forum, the first public forum section.
At the beginning of the
Yes.
meeting. Okay. So we'll expect that on Thursday. Yes, go ahead, Grant.
So the number of police officers is consistent with before, and I think it was 6. Okay.
Okay. We'll move on. 2 through 5, if there's nothing to discuss, we'll go to 6. But before that, anyone want to discuss anything on 2 through 5? Okay, we'll move on to number 6.
Thank you, Your Honor. A6 is in relation to the future fire station 4 ground that is currently under purchase agreement to be closed on August 1st. This resolution simply preserves the city council's ability to bond in the future. The purchase of ground for fire station 4 was originally programmed in the capital improvement program to be part of the series 2020 bonds. And as you know, we just completed the series 2020 bonds. So this resolution simply preserves the council's ability to basically make the purchase with reserves and other funds in the capital projects fund and then bond in the future.
Is that clear for everyone? Questions?
Yeah, question.
Yeah, Will, do you have a question? Oh.
Well,
Go ahead.
my question, Leanne, is what are the payment terms, the purchase terms on that? Because obviously the fire department group is going to pay a large portion of that. So are there deferred payments, or are we going to actually have to bond for that? Or is all of this being paid in the year 2020, or are there some deferred payments that this really isn't going to require bonding immediately?
I think right now that's an unknown. The purchase agreement does contemplate a lease agreement.
Yeah.
So in discussions with the city manager, we decided to at least keep the flexibility of the ability to bond. And so
Yeah, based on what you just described, it seems we should be able to use those lease agreements as part of the purchase agreement to make and facilitate payments for the purchase price without having to worry about bonding. I mean, I'm fine keeping it in our back pocket, but given the lease agreement that's going to be attached to that or follow up with that purchase agreement, the cash flow ought to, we ought to be able to set up the purchase agreement so that those future lease agreements offset any payments that the city would have for its portion. So, anyway.
Our intention at this point, Steve, is that we would use the operating capital in the capital projects fund for the city's share of that purchase and then reimburse it from those lease agreements. But what we wanted to make sure was, that's a 5-year lease. And if the business went out of business in year 2 or year 3, we were just making sure that we were hedging our bets to preserve the ability to bond if we had to. I don't anticipate that because they are a business that has a long history. But as you say, this is a hip pocket item for us. Just if something became desperate, we'd have the ability to do it, but we do not anticipate needing to at this point.
Okay, so we're talking about, when you mentioned bonding, we're talking about bonding for the purchase price of the property?
it would not be the full purchase price, although I know that the resolution currently does provide the ability to bond up to that amount. And I would like to remind council, anytime we bond, there are multiple resolutions and actions that come forward as part of that bonding process.
Okay, so I'm just not understanding what the bonding would be for. If the purchase price is already there, the money to purchase it is existing.
It would be to reimburse ourselves for the internal financing that we're going to use to purchase it, Mayor. We have a sufficient balance in the capital projects fund to be able to provide that amount now. But as I said, it's predicated on the idea that over 5 years, we'll repay that from the proceeds from the lease. So if something were to happen and we needed those dollars replenished back into that, we would have the ability then to use a bond to replenish our internal funds. But we're not at this point contemplating that we would have to do anything with the firefighter association or anything like that.
Right. Okay, go ahead, Will.
I'm confused also, because Leanne, didn't you just say that it was we bonded for it already for the purchase of it? So if we already...
No, I did not. What I said is that the purchase, we originally in the capital improvement program had planned out this to be part of the series 2021 bonds, which would not include until next spring. So the money that is sitting in the capital projects fund is actually more or less money being borrowed against other projects or against our capital project reserves. And then we'll have that money trickling back in from the lease.
It makes sense. I think when you first mentioned it, you said it was part of the 2020.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we,
That's what.
I think that's where we got confused.
Okay.
So, okay. I think that makes sense now. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Leanne. Number 7.
Number 7, I will actually turn over to Chief Crabbill since it is a fire-related item.
Okay. Hello, Chief.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. This is our first aerial truck of Marion, which we purchased back in 1995. An aerial truck has to pass annual inspection, and it did not pass its last inspection. The repairs that need to be made so that it can't still be used is over $60,000. So with the value, since it is 25 years old, I don't think we'll be able to get that money back. So we'd like to sell it, actually. We really don't need it. We have plenty of other aerial trucks in our surrounding communities that we do mutual aid with. So I really don't think that it's needed anymore, and I don't think the city should put the money into it because I don't think it'll last that long.
So we don't have, we have the new aerial that
We have the new
purchased,
aerial.
and
Yes.
that's the only other one?
Yep.
Any questions? And you're confident that if we needed more than one aerial, we'd be able to?
No, Cedar Rapids had 2 aerials for quite some time. They're down to 1. They are going to be purchasing a second, but we rely on mutual aid more than anything now to try to keep the cost down for Cedar Rapids and us. So we've got a good deal going on with Hiawatha, Cedar Rapids fire departments so that we can use mutual aid and not have to spend the money.
Okay. Questions? Yes, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, Chief, I think you mentioned to me that it was a $60,000 repair bill, and it was to make sure that the ladder was safe and operable.
That's correct.
Just out of curiosity, what's, just for that apparatus, what's its operational budget to maintain it and keep it going? And that might be a wild guess would be okay.
With the inspections, we do our own maintenance, so personnel time. The gas usage, I would say 20,000 maybe a year. And we haven't used it but once in the past year.
I would say, Your Honor, I was just going to add that the insurance also on these items, I cannot tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, but I can tell you that on the new aerial, I think the insurance alone is $4,500 a year. They're not cheap.
Okay. Did that answer your question? Great, okay. Anyone else?
No.
Chief, do you have anything else?
Nope, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is number 8.
Your Honor, this is related to the fire station project. And this is an amendment to the architect's scope of services to include design and planning related items that were not originally included in the original contract. The first one is energy modeling that is done by design engineers. They're the subcontractor to OPN. They're our mechanical designers. This is a design triggered need. What they did is model the design to make sure the design is code compliance. Code compliant with the energy code. was not originally included in their scope of services. The second one is related to site condition. When we got the report about the high water table at the site and we had to drain the site, so Hall and Hall are the civil engineers. They prepared an early bid package to drain the site and prep the site for the building to make the timeline and to make the construction season. The third one is related to redesigning the pond. Originally was thought to be a training pond. So what happened is the depth changed and we had to redesign to remove a retaining wall. So this is just the fees. They're just related to those items, and OPN already just not included them in their fees. They're just passing those into us without markups. Do you have any question about any of them?
Questions? Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The next two items are not marked for discussion. Certainly. Please note if you want to discuss either of those. Those will move to number 2 under public safety. Chief Crable.
Yes, this is to purchase the fire alarm system for the new station. The alarm system is not your fire alarm that if there's a fire, it's actually our alert system to let us know when there's 911 calls. We presently have the same system, the Phoenix G2, in stations 1 and 2, which we purchased many years ago. So we've been in a contract with the company for a long time. We need the 3 stations to be interconnected. So we need to keep the same equipment. So that's why we're choosing who we're choosing. We already have a contract with them. And actually the cost estimate for this was about $80,000. So we're under budget.
Questions? So this money's been budgeted already?
Yes.
No questions? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We'll move on to engineering. Number 1 is marked for discussion. Mr. Barkalow joining us. He'll be up here for a while.
Come on. All right, so number 1 and 2 are related to the same project. This is the, we can go to the next slide. This is the phase 2 of the Cmar project. So the area that's bolded, that's black there, goes. So it's going from Marion Boulevard through Thomas Park down to the T near Menards, but not doing that north-south tier so that we can get our equipment down there to do the sanitary trunk sewer project. So this is paving the existing limestone trail. This was bid through the DOT. It did come in at 92.3% of the engineer's estimate. And the detailed bid tab is in your packet. So there were 6 bids that the DOT received, a late start date of August 8th, 50 working days, and $1,000 per day in liquidated damages. So we are recommending that we proceed with the contract with Midwest Concrete.
Questions? Will, you have a question?
Yeah, but it's more for Mike. Carolyn. When the construction is going on, is there going to be detours around? Is it just going to be closed? Maybe you know.
We'll just have to close those sections of it.
And no detour.
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions?
it's very hard to keep trail users off the trail. I'm sure they'll be out on the grass using it.
They'll find a way. Okay, no questions on that. We'll move on to number 3.
So number 3 then is a public hearing regarding the sidewalk ramp project. We did get, so there's several locations there on the map, and then we did get 4 bids for this project. The low bid did come in above budget. So what we are recommending as staff is we accept the contract as is, and then we will come back to City Council with a change order deduction to take a few intersections out so that we can get it within budget. So we are recommending approval of the contract with Midwest Concrete, $203,448, late start date of August 10th, 50 working days, and $300 per day in liquidated damages.
Okay, questions on that? Yes, go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, Mike, how many intersections do you think you'll have to take out?
So there's some that are fairly complex. They decided to take a challenge this year, and some of them have retaining walls or moving water services. So depending on what easements they get, there were several easements that were in the consent agenda. If there's obviously some intersections that don't get the temporary construction easements, those are the easy ones to throw out. I would say 1 if we do a more complex one, maybe 2 or 3 if we do less complex.
Thank you.
Other questions on this item? Okay, we'll move on to number 5, the public hearing for the fire station traffic signals.
Yep. So this is the intersection of Tower Terrace and Irish Drive. These will be emergency signals only, so similar to what's on 8th Avenue now. So they will stay green for Tower Terrace and red for Irish Drive until they're activated with the GPS system on the fire engines or police vehicles responding to calls, and then they will change based on that preamp system. In the future, when this does meet traffic warrants for pedestrians and our vehicles, then we'll look at changing the signal so that it's a fully actuated signal. So all the hardware will be installed with the project, and then we can just switch it at a later date and figure out the signal timings. But for now, it'll be just for operation for emergencies. We did get 3 bids. If we can go to the next slide. The low one is from K&W at $237,920. It was over the engineer's estimate, but it is under the budget. The budget was $300,000 for the signals. Has a late start date of 4/5/21 because there's such a long lead time on the actual poles. That way they can get them ordered and get them up in the spring. There's 30 working days and $300 per day in liquidated damages.
Is that part of the budget, the total budget for the project?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just that 300 was pulled out separately as a
Sure.
budgetary item.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Renee.
Will the full signalization coincide with opening up 2 lanes on each side? Will both of those happen together? Not necessarily.
I guess I'm not following the question.
So Tower Terrace was built to be 4 lanes, right? So I'm just wondering if when we need the signalization, will we already have those lanes in? Will it happen at the same time? Or are they not necessarily related?
No. So in the future, when those lanes are added, we would have to add additional heads to the signal.
So they're not necessarily related is the answer.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be a few years until we need the extra lanes on Tower Terrace.
Other questions? Okay, for 7 and 8, I will turn the meeting over to the Mayor Pro Tem.
So number 7 is approving the contract and bond with LL Pelling. They were our 1 and low bidder for the 2020 HMA resurfacing project. It included 9 streets, has a completion date of 10/23/20 and $300 per day in liquidated damages. So this is just approving the contract and bond. We had the public hearing at the last council meeting. 29th Avenue is one of the streets.
Will, question?
So this is where the county is going to spend or pay for part of
Seacrest.
Seacrest, thank you. How much is going to be their portion of that?
So it's approximately $100,000.
Okay.
It'll be based on what we actually do out in the field. We'll actually field measure everything and determine what's in the county and what's in the city, and they'll pay per unit item their cost. And then there's a 7.5% administration fee on top of that.
That's a lower number than I thought maybe it would be, where we would save some money there because they were paying part of it. Maybe we could do some more, but no. Thank you.
Okay, move on to number 8.
So number 8 is a change order with L. Pelling regarding the airport project and some removal of trees that were not caught in the topo. So we did this as a time and material, which means our inspector that's out there monitors how much equipment and time it actually takes to do it. They log it, and then both the contractor and our inspector sign off on it. The usage rates are submitted ahead of time, so we have those when we write the change order.
I've got a tangent question to this. Is there a expected date on when we're going to be able to start landing planes out there again?
Yes, it's a common thing that comes up.
I bet it is.
Right now, they're thinking mid-July. There's a lot of stuff to do with the lighting yet.
All right.
The paint can't go down until 30 days after the HMA has been down, so we're getting close on that as well. So tentatively, we're thinking mid-July at this point, but weather can always hinder that.
That's right. That's been a long time coming. It'll be a nice project. All right. Move the meeting back to the mayor.
Okay, number 9.
So number 9 is just the second reading, modifying SUDAS. When we adopted it, there was one section that was not changed.
So was that just an oversight, or?
Yep.
Okay, so. Questions on number 9? Anybody want to tell me what SUDAS stands for? just testing them.
I can bring the books down.
Okay, number 10.
Item number 10 and 11 is a TAC request that we received from the Linn-Mar School District to add a school crossing at the intersection of 35th and 35th with the new school opening up on 35th Avenue. So this is not a lighted sign. This is just a standard sign. And then they're also going to put crossing guards out on this intersection as well. So TAC received it, and they're recommending that those signs go in and just coordinate with public service to get those signs up.
Okay, questions? Is everyone hearing okay with the rain?
That's loud.
Yeah, I can't hear myself.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on this item? Okay, next item.
So the next item is from the Marion Independent School District, letter to receive and file the TAC, and then TAC reviewed it. They basically want to take the brown sign that says Marion High School and Athletic Complex and modify it so that it changes the directions. The football field and the track is not at the same location as the high school, so they want to get that wayfinding out there so that it directs people more of where they need to go. So they're just updating the wayfinding sign out there. So that's their request. TAC concurs with that. So.
Okay, questions on that? Okay, next item.
It looked like same as before. We look
I've
so
been looking
small.
at that
Oh,
darn
we're
thing the
back
whole
on.
meeting.
The mics are on.
The mics are back.
Okay. And they're all
So
on.
it's the system, or Zoom is recording, so.
Okay,
everything
so we're
should be
back on Zoom and everything is,
I think so.
All right.
okay, we apologize for that interruption. We had some power outage that caused everything to halt for a little bit, but we're back online and we're back in our meeting.
Yeah, and I received a comment that they can hear audio now, so we should be good.
Okay, good. All right, we have one more item with number 14 under engineering.
Yes, Your Honor. So this is a motion to receive, file, and discuss a letter from the Solid Waste Agency. So they originally submitted a site plan to us. A part of that site plan showed that they were going to fill up to an elevation of 922 above the sea level. Per the settlement agreement that we have agreed with them, they were not supposed to be above 914. And in this, the statement actually that's in the agreement says the final elevation of the landfill located on the property shall not exceed 914 feet above sea level at any point. So after we brought that up to their attention and they got the project bid, they went back and evaluated the plans and they resubmitted those to us. And now they are showing that it is below the 914 elevation. I didn't know if City Council wanted to write anything back to them or discuss this further. But so far it's just gone on with staff and the agency. So I didn't know if council wanted to have a response written back to them, or I think they are planning on presenting to you at the next city council if you want to talk to them then. So I'm just giving you the information and we will follow whatever direction you guys want to from this information.
Okay, so they're not going, the work they're going to be doing is not going to exceed at this point, not going to
At
exceed
this
the height
point,
limit.
correct.
Okay.
They've changed their plans.
And from what I understand, it was going to be a temporary thing, right? It wasn't
Right,
anything
but
permanent.
the way that we were reading and interpreting it said it shall not exceed at any point.
Sure. No,
So we didn't believe that that was.
okay. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or comments on that. I don't think that we should have had to reach out to them about their, whether it's temporary or permanent, their knowledge that they were going to be exceeding that limit. I think they should have reached out to us sooner, but I don't know if that warrants any kind of a letter or response, but I'm sure you've communicated that with them, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's why when we received the plans and reviewed them, that's why we brought it to their attention that it's not following the
Sure.
approved agreement.
Okay. Go ahead, Renee.
I just, not sure if we need to make our Marion representative on the board aware of this to keep him in the loop, if it helps or not, but just
He
a
is,
thought.
he is aware, and
He's aware?
yeah.
Okay.
I think he's the one who brought it to our attention, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Any thoughts on whether there should be any kind of formal response, or you think you've covered it with them and they understand?
What I recommended to them when they made the change, I recommended that they write a letter that we could receive and file so that city council could see that those changes were being made.
Okay.
Done.
Okay. So anyone else have further thoughts on that? All right, thank you.
Nope.
That's it for engineering. Thank you. Community development. Dave, welcome.
Thank you. The first item, this is Kyle had discussed a little earlier tonight regarding the Carriage Corner revised final site development plan. They were working off some sandboard maps and some bad assumptions when they initially laid out their final site development plan. When they got the survey involved, several things happened. The property lines were actually further from the sidewalk than typical or what's assumed. Then the existing house on the southwest corner of the property, I think everybody assumed it was in the alley. It looked like it was in the old alley about 3 or 4 feet. In reality, it was outside the alley. So when you have the existing house pushed further into the property, it shifts the parking lot to the north. Then it shifts the proposed buildings further north and then into the required setbacks. So when they did the survey, they came back with some setback changes that were more than I could approve administratively, so it has to come back to the council for reapproval. I'm only allowed about 10 or 15% variance by myself without the council approval. So the average setback along 4th Avenue from the porch goes from 12 to 8, and then the average setback for the building goes from 18 feet to 13 and a half feet. So everything shifts approximately 4 feet further north. When we went out and looked at the properties around it, a lot of the structures are already kind of at that setback already. So it wasn't like it's sticking way out. It was actually fairly consistent with the neighborhood that was there. The setbacks along 9th Street. This is the east side of the property. They go from about 7 foot average to about 6 foot 6 inches for the porches, and the buildings still stay right around 12 feet, give or take a few inches. They felt so that didn't change much. Everything else stays the same on the project: the style, location of the 2 brick homes across the street. Nothing else changes. This is just merely a setback change, really, on the 4th Avenue side. Any questions on that one? In the building permit, I didn't want to, when Kyle was speaking, they have had the foundation permit submitted a couple weeks ago. They've basically been approved. They're waiting for city council action on this revised site plan so they can approve those footing plans. So those should be, as Kyle said, they could be issued probably on Friday or Monday, this Friday or first Monday next week, pending Thursday's action.
Okay. Any questions about the site plan, final site plan for Carriage Corner? Yes, go ahead, Renee.
Yes. So what happens with something like this? Obviously, it's kind of too late to go back and redo it correctly, or as they said they were going to do it. So is there any penalty? What do we do to discourage everyone from doing something like this to get a little more? I really don't like the idea of just pushing this through without some kind of deterrent to others.
The only way to assure it never happens is just requiring a survey of the property and surveying the building.
Dave, would you speak into the microphone?
Yeah, sorry. Trying to address Renee.
We want everybody to hear this.
This is trying to address Renee. Sorry.
Yeah.
The only way to assure it doesn't happen is have it surveyed and have the corners of the buildings surveyed in place on the site. That's something we usually get a little bit later, and we usually have a lot more room to work with. So the only way to assure it never happens again is get that survey done. But when you're conceptually laying things out, you don't always necessarily want to spend that money when you're still massaging things. And a survey it's expensive, and I'm sure it's a cost I'm sure they'd like to avoid until they absolutely have to spend it. And they got at that stage where they had to do it, and they had some good assumptions. And I was out there, and when they were talking about them, looking at it, you assume it looked good, but it really wasn't in the end. So
does that answer your question? Or
yeah. Well, kind of, because what I also don't want to do is come up with some new hoop that everybody has to jump through if this is really a unicorn kind of thing. I mean, does this happen very often?
I don't think this happens too often. It may occur. I think we'll see it more as we have the traditional core of Marion redevelop, whether it be uptown or these surrounding residential neighborhoods. I know this developer's learned a lesson. I think we've learned a lesson to probably require that survey earlier than later in these older core areas or in a tight site. If we're working in a cornfield, I think we got a lot more leeway to work with by putting a building in the middle of a 10-acre parcel. But I think we'll probably be looking at least getting a survey of the property pins done a lot earlier. Typically, that's only before survey pins. It'll still cost a few $1,000s, but it avoids this.
It's because in an older area, lines are more blurred.
They're more blurred. I mean, if we're in any new development, I can almost say with confidence your property pins are 2 feet from your sidewalk with really good high certainty.
They just weren't consistent in
these old parts of town. They can be underneath the sidewalk, a foot in, 2 foot in, 3 foot in. You just don't know.
Underneath the sidewalk?
Yeah, they're under the sidewalk. So if you see a little X carved in the sidewalk, there's probably a pin underneath that sidewalk, or that's where the pin should be. So
Okay. Official.
so it's we just need to be a little more diligent with these developers.
So,
these
but
old part towns.
Renee's question was, does this happen a lot? Or?
There's always a lot of nervousness in the old parts of town, just especially when we're working. Mostly with redevelopment, it should not be a problem. And I'm a little embarrassed I got this far without it being pushed. But with a lot of single-family homeowners that want to put on a garage or do a little addition to the house, it's a problem often. You know, they're already spending $20,000 on a garage. They don't want to spend another $1,000 to get their pins located. So we're usually just working off one pin, and it's kind of assumed. It's agreed upon by all the property owners. That's the pin, so that's how things kind of work. Not the ideal, but that's how it's done. So I would say this is a very rare situation, but it's something we can definitely avoid in the future.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just thank you. So is there something that you guys are going to change in the department in terms of requiring something sooner to avoid this, or are you going to change the process at all?
No, it won't change the process. It's just one more item in our checklist. Will say, have the property pins been located or surveyed. So it's it's nothing that we need from council, or it doesn't change the process. It's just one more checkbox in our application that we're going to have to add into it. And I think we're redoing that right now. And I think Nicole's.
So that would avoid the issue.
It should, unless they just pull a wrong pin, which happens sometimes too. I mean, they say, well, we found all 4 pins. We didn't get it surveyed, but we found them. So we're going to have to be diligent if they didn't do a survey that they're pulling off the correct ones.
Okay. Anything else, Renee?
No, thank you. I'm good with
Steve,
that.
go ahead.
Dave, one quick question. So based on the comments you gave us, you still feel the appearance of this project within the neighborhood with the change in these setbacks is still going to be appropriate?
Oh, I think the setbacks are very similar to other structures around there. I think it'll look really good.
Okay.
Really confident about it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Number 2.
This is the Bridge Creek 5th edition. This is the Mooney project. It's located off Winslow Road, highlighted there in red, just on the bend of Winslow Road. This is I have my notes here. This is a 25 single-family lots on just over 8 acres. It's actually a reduction of 2 lots from what was approved about 6 years ago. Reductions are always okay. We don't mind less density. So all the improvements are installed. There's no surety required with it. You can see it's 2 cul-de-sacs. It meets the approved preliminary plat. The one lot of note, I can't highlight it here, but it's a triangle piece. The 2 cul-de-sacs. It's just right next to the big lot. There's a little triangle lot. It's fronting onto Winslow Road, so there will be one driveway onto Winslow Road. We try to avoid that as much as we can, but sometimes the lay of the land it leaves some extra land or lots that have to be accommodated. So one lot, not ideal, but we do have some roads or driveways already onto Winslow. This will be the only one on this lot. The large basin to the north is going to be public and will be dedicated to the city for our maintenance. The developer will be responsible for sidewalks along that basin and getting it cleaned out before we do ultimately accept it when all the home building's done.
Yes, go ahead, Renee.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out that 2 lots aren't going to be built on. So it says that each existing lot is 5 feet wider. So yay for Marion for having more space in the yards. My question comes from your Winslow Road comment in the driveway. If that house has guests, where will they park? You can't park on the street, correct?
That is correct.
So it's
they'll
the
have to be
driveway
accommodated on the driveway, or they'll have to go up to the cul-de-sac and park on that public street there.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead.
Dave, just to clarify, is it the lot 45 and lot C that won't be built on?
No, lot 45 is a buildable lot.
Okay.
Lot C is the public detention basin.
Okay.
And it's already installed, and it's serving the base. It's serving as a basin for some of those properties to the north already.
Okay, thank you. I was just partly getting oriented to just what was there already. Okay, thanks.
Yes, go ahead, Will.
I see the one street's called Tall Pines Court. Does that mean the tall pines there are actually staying?
I don't know. I hope so.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be the
That'd be
homeowner's
nice.
responsibility if they want them gone, but it looks nice.
Yeah.
They actually backed up to the old farmhouse that was there on the Botany Farm.
Hope they stay if they're listening.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mayor Pro Tem for the next 3 items.
Next 3, all right. Go ahead on number 3.
Yep. Or is it number 3? It is. Yes, this is it's the final site development plan for Robson Homes, just located north of 29th Avenue there. Obviously, the property is highlighted in red. This is 33 lots for single-family homes on just around 10 acres. So it's a little more dense than a typical residential neighborhood in Marion. This was approved, the preliminary site development plan for the entire 80 acres, plus or minus a few there, was approved a few years ago, and the developers begun that process of developing. It is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. And if I go to the next slide there, Terrell, please. There we go. It's the area highlighted in red again. Everything in blue is single-family detached homes. However, these are they're smaller, or sorry, they're a narrower lot. They're still over 6,000. They're still over the minimum requirements. They're just a little narrower for a longer and smaller home. The developer is proposing a mix of single story and multi-story homes on the property. You can see on the images above, he's got one traditional footprint and 2 exhibits of more, I'm gonna call it a contemporary design. This is actually very, very popular design in the Des Moines metro area. I was just over there last week, and there's a lot of homes that are being built like that. So it's very popular. It's catching on, and I've seen them out in a few other larger municipalities here in Iowa. And this is the one change that Nicole noted in the staff report. The home elevation on the top of the page there, which I'm calling traditional, or very typical to Marion. On the initial approved preliminary site development plan, the developer had just 4 contemporary home styles. He didn't have a traditional home style, and how he's proposing to allow a traditional home style in this mix as well. He did not provide any justification or why that is. It's what came in. So maybe the market is asking for that traditional suburban Marion ranch. Other than that, everything is identical. Lot sizes, number of units. There were some requirements at council with the preliminary plat. Nicole had noted those in the staff report, and that was the if a fence is going to be proposed, it will be the black vinyl along the south side. I'm sorry, along the north side of 29th Avenue, south side of the homes, and there should be a landscape buffer. That's more than typical. That's not typically required with a single-family development, just to help break up that the number of buildings or number of homes on that, because it's a little denser than would be traditionally permitted. Other than that, it's consistent, and staff is recommending approval. Oh, I should say, this is the final site development plan. He will be following up with the final plat here when he gets a little further along. There's just been grading, I think, underground work being done up there, so he still has a lot of public improvements to do. So he'll final plat when he gets a little closer, and it won't cost him as much with surety requirements.
Question, Will?
More of a comment. I'm excited to see some non-traditional looking homes coming into the market. I know, like you said, other areas that are seeing these, and from what I've been seeing, they are also quite popular elsewhere. So I'm excited to see that, and I also think that these smaller, these smaller lots with the little smaller homes are needed in the area, because the pricing for new homes has gone up so much that there's definitely a need or a desire for this type of project. So
I remember when
Excited to see it.
when the preliminary plat came through, we had a lot of discussion about that and put on the additional stipulations. So and those were put on primarily because all of this is going to back up to 29th Avenue, which is one of our main arterials. So those stipulations are still in there, and I think those will be good to have as those houses are built. But again, one of the other comments we made back then was it's good. It's going to be nice to see the variety. Renee.
Yeah, I don't want to give the wrong impression. We need a diverse housing stock, and I'm actually for these. My comment before was just, I feel like the developers always give you, anyway. And the reason that there's so many there and we wanted all that screening was because across the street, those homes have like an acre or something, right, Dave? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's right across the street from those. It's pretty significantly different. So I'm glad, to Steve's point, we put in the extra screening and buffering for that purpose.
All right, move on to number 4, public hearing.
This is the, I'm gonna combine number 4 and 6 just for my presentation.
Okay.
They're kind of one and the same. First item is number 4. It's an amendment to the future land use plan for for Marion. Currently, the property is designated as single-family detached, which is your single-family homes, and they're amending it to single-family attached, which would allow condominiums. And then the second item would be a approval of a preliminary site development plan. Again, the master plan for the development. This has gone through several changes over the last couple of years. They would like to, currently it's zoned for 18 units on 9 lots. So these are condominiums, each get their own lot, so 2 units per lot. The developer has indicated because of financing changes that they'd like to go to each 0 lot lines. That requires a plan development in the city of Marion. And so it'll be, again, 18 homes on 18 lots instead of 18 homes on 9 lots. And that's the need for the change. Again, it's purely, I think, because of financing, the way condos are financed. This helps when they have property attached to a lot. On this image here above you, this is their site development plan, and as you can see, it gets a little tight in the bulb itself with driveways. They're going to have they may be impacted by a heavy snow. Ryan's guys do a pretty good job of everything, but this is it's a short run, and there's not a whole lot of room for storage. So the driveways will get some snow in it as well. The light gray areas, those are parts of the street that have to be removed. They're having to change the services around a little bit to accommodate the new services. They got to go into the street and make those connections. Darren is making them go out and repair the entire, instead of just cutting a hole, doing your work and closing it, he's making them replace entire panels. So it keeps the street life longer than just patching as we go. We did notify, this neighborhood has gotten quite a few notifications lately with the other Skogman project to the south. So we did do a pretty ample notification on this property just because they're aware of changes in the neighborhood. So notices went out and signs as well. In the staff report, it was fairly lengthy. Again, they provided proposed homes in the area. I'm going to call them kind of that typical Skogman or Midwest development style condo. They're a very nice unit, each with a 2-stall garage. So it's kind of what we've kind of seen from Skogman before. I'm sorry, Midwest before. There was really no other issues with the property. It's already been final platted. Well, I'm sorry, it's not to be replatted with the new lots, but it's been final platted before. So all the improvements are again in, other than what they had to redo for the service lines. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this.
Can you give a clarification here, Dave? Because I was looking at this, and obviously we had a very lengthy discussion when the 7th edition came through back in June. And so when I looked at this, I go, all right, isn't this kind of some of the same issue that we had or were talking about before? where we're trying to put a different type of housing in the middle of all of this single family. And what did everybody in that neighborhood expect? And what were they told or what was shown?
Yep.
So walk us through a little bit more about, so this was zoned single family, but your comments in here, which is kind of catching my attention, is the original preliminary plat and approved final plat for the first edition had 9 individual lots for 18 units proposed, 2 units per lot. So what was in the preliminary and final plat back in 2011 is showing what is really coming through today. What would people who are buying lots and houses out there, what would they have seen if they looked at this area?
Yeah, they would have seen almost this exact image.
Okay.
Without a lot line going down the middle of the buildings.
Except for that, it's still
an imaginary line that they can't see anyway. I mean, they're seeing the same number of units, probably the same style.
Okay.
I'm guessing. But what they see is what they hear is what they really should have seen, other than that imaginary line that they can't see going through the house.
Well, based upon what you're saying, you're really just, instead of 2 per lot, you're just doing 1 per lot.
Correct.
And that's
then,
really the major change.
Yeah. Now, again, the buildings may have shifted here and there on the lot
Okay.
to make them work, but I can't imagine they would see any changes.
Steve, since as a real estate professional, since day one of this development, I've always been told that, excuse me, that's going to be condominiums there, and that's what I've always told people.
Okay.
So it's, from what we've been told, it's the same thing.
All right. That's what I want to make sure is crystal clear as we talk about this item on the agenda. Renee?
So my question is to your comment about the snow buildup.
Mm-hmm.
That would reflect poorly on the city, right? Like these get built, these get sold, terrible winter, and Ryan's going to get hammered, right? Because we're going to approve this design that we already know is going to cause issues. Is that true?
No, I don't. I mean, the developer's been warned about this.
But once the developer sells,
Yep.
they don't care,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Ryan's guys do a great job. In the heaviest snow, everybody has problems, and they may have to go back and spend a little extra time on this cul-de-sac. But it's going to have snow like everybody else in their driveway, maybe a little bit more than average. But they were going to have this problem before, but they never had to illustrate it like this. So now it's just something you see because it's actually being illustrated with the driveways. Even with the previous phase, they were still going to have this problem.
But it's not built yet, right? So we
Right.
keep calling it a problem, and I don't know why we wouldn't want to fix the problem before we build the problem.
Again, I don't.
Right, you're not the builder.
I say problem. Again, it may be an inconvenience for a little while. I mean, I don't say it's a problem, but I see cul-de-sacs are always last hit, regardless even of a light snow. It's still, my cul-de-sac's not done yet. It's just there's gonna be snow there. I don't think it's gonna be anything greatly,
And street parking in the cul-de-sac for guests, you don't see that as an issue?
It'll be limited to one side. Darren will decide that when they bring in the final plat. He'll look at the side that has the best. There'll be no parking allowed in the bulb, period, unless you're parking in front of your own driveway, blocking your own driveway. But there'll be there'll be no parking allowed in the bulb, period. And Darren will pick a side when the final plat comes in. I don't know what side he'll call.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very, granted, these are very long driveways. There's a lot more parking than probably your traditional neighborhood just because the driveways and homes are set a little bit further back. Skogum usually goes 30 to 35 foot on the setbacks rather than the typical 25. So there's more room there. And then the north-south street there, I don't recall what it's called. We'll have parking on it as well, one side.
And then one last question. Last year when we were doing the dog and pony for the comp plan everywhere,
mm-hmm.
What did we show here?
It was probably.
What were we showing the public that we were gonna have? Was it a change
the zoning map?
Yeah.
I'd have to pull that up. I don't recall. I can.
You look for Thursday? Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Grant has a question.
Dave, just a question back to the snow removal concern. Is that an elevated circle in the middle of the cul-de-sac?
No, actually, no. That's the gray area is just highlighting where they're having to rip out the panels. This is an open cul-de-sac.
Okay.
The gray area is just the panels, is the parts of the street they're going to have to they're going to rip out and replace to change the service lines. it does kind of look like that though.
Thank you.
Colette?
So snow as well. I live in a cul-de-sac and I have more room in my cul-de-sac to put snow and it's still an issue. So where will the snow? I mean, I know we're but where will, you can't possibly leave any snow in that.
I'm gonna drag Ryan into this because he's just sitting there quietly and he can answer a lot. I mean, I think it's gonna be more time, but I think they can accommodate it still. So.
Stick them up here.
Like Renee said, I mean, the last thing we want to do is get into a situation and then we've got Ryan's crew.
Just an HOA. I'm sorry? Just an HOA.
I don't have an HOA on it.
Yeah, so typically with these developments, they'll have an HOA. And so what we see are the issues not necessarily with our staff or the snow removal in the street. It's the storage from their own driveways. So best example, if you go up to Morris's Wood Addition off of 35th there, their problem is finding room in between the driveways. So with us, that cul-de-sac, that's not going to impact our operations. It's going to be plowed just like everything else by city ordinance. They cannot take that snow off their property. Okay, so they have to store it on their property. So in terms of our snow removal operations, we really don't have concerns. The concerns are going to be with the neighbors, and we've seen it happen. It happens a lot in these things. They run out of room for snow storage when we get those winters that are long and hard. And so by looking at this, it's not an issue for our staff, but it's going to become potentially, and sometimes it's not, an issue with the HOA. Now, sometimes we go out, if there's significant visual impairments, we'll tell the HOA, you got a little bit of snow out, you got to take it out there. Of course, that's more cost. But this would not be unique in the city of Marion. This happens a lot.
So this is more of a buyer beware than the town gets the shaft?
There are a lot, there's some places I could show you that are a lot worse.
Okay, well, I'm glad that was helpful. I'm just trying to protect you guys and I mean, if people want to buy them and it's on the HOAs.
But with the driveways that tight, we have a lot of places like that, that'll typically happen. Now it's for the council, so the council understands we permit all snow removal contractors in town. They got to come to us and give us a permit. We will know the contractor that's operating with that HOA. If it becomes an issue, we call that vendor up and says, hey, you got to get the snow out of there. And so we do have practices and procedures in there to regulate it. But in a hard winter, it could be an issue for the residents, but not from our operations.
Having that as an HOA, I think, eliminates a lot of the public problems that may be talked about. So they can all take care of it themselves and find out that, I mean, they're responsible for the vendor that they select, and they can put the pressure on them a whole lot more than they can put the pressure on Ryan's group.
So Culver's, Greg's Lawn, people like that, they're going to come in here and they're going to use heavy equipment, skid loaders and things like that. They're going to stack it really, really high when they get a lot of snow. And at some point we tell them, you got to get it out there.
And if they're not doing a good job, they'll say they'll find somebody else the next year.
And they do.
So, yep. Exactly. Okay, good. Okay.
I have one correction, Mike. It's not shown on the drawing, and that's what I was going off of. But Mike did for Grant. It is there is an island in the middle of this one. It's actually not shown on the plans that it should. So, and then I'll verify an HOA before Thursday.
Okay. Okay. So, any more questions on this before we move on? All right, we'll move the meeting back to the mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you. Okay, under department discussions, we have under administration discussion regarding request status report. Is that you, Rachel?
Yeah, council requested that this be a discussion item, so I will open the floor to you guys if you had specific questions.
If I could interject, Rachel, Councilwoman Gadela was the one that asked that we have a discussion about this and iterated some concerns with, for example, aging out and how frequently it was being updated. So I just wanted to let everybody know that I have asked the departments to designate a staff person whose responsibility it is to ride herd on the report, and that some of the items that are on there, in particular, there's one that I think was a nuisance abatement that had been on there for a while, will be more appropriately moved over to the monthly reports once they reach that stage where it's more of a long-term ongoing project. So hopefully that'll help clean it up.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Lon. It even looks shorter than the last time I saw it, which means some things probably fell off. So awesome.
Okay. Any questions on this? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Lon, this representation seems pretty similar to those samples I shared with you the other day, referring to what I called a stoplight report. Things are green in good condition, yellow falling behind, red not completed. So that kind of fits this model. I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you.
That's Renee.
Other questions or comments on this? Okay. Should we move on to the next one? Discussion regarding community-wide Wi-Fi.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I'll handle this one. We wanted to have a follow-up discussion with the council regarding community-wide Wi-Fi because it's coming up in a couple of different arenas. First is that in relation to looking at the uptown design for the plaza, future extensions of the Uptown Artway, 7th Avenue streetscape, the question was posed about whether or not we needed to be putting in infrastructure that could support eventually adding Wi-Fi to the plaza area. So there's an infrastructure side to it. But then also, as we continue to have discussions with the Community Recovery Task Force and our economic development partners and other groups around the community about what this fall could potentially look like with the continued response to COVID. And so I don't think it's any secret to anybody at this point that a lot of places have changed their business models and we have a lot more people working from home. There's always the possibility that schools may not be able to do traditional classroom settings if there's some kind of another outbreak or surge that happens later on this fall. And so we wanted to re-engage the council to see what, if your thinking on community-wide Wi-Fi has evolved as well. It seems like there's definitely support for it amongst the community partners that we've talked with. When we researched it the last time, we were working with one particular vendor who was wanting to do a master services agreement with the community. We do have our citywide fiber optic network that could be leveraged to provide these services around the community. But as we've talked about it some internally, that if we were going to move forward with it, what we'd probably recommend to the council is that we would do an RFP to select a partner so that we could maximize the value for the community. So really the question is, since it was ranked in the CIP process, but was not considered to be a priority project at the time, if council is supportive of moving forward with a project, then the motion on Thursday would be a motion directing staff to start developing a community-wide Wi-Fi initiative.
Okay. Questions?
I got it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you give everybody a definition of what community-wide Wi-Fi really means? So if we do that community-wide, does that mean I can cancel my internet agreement and piggyback off of this system? So, I mean, I know I've been part of the discussions about there's a number of people, and we obviously have a lot of people throughout the community that need more access to Wi-Fi. But when you say community-wide Wi-Fi, will you define that for us and tell us what that actually may look like, Lon?
Sure. Community-wide Wi-Fi is not unlimited access. The intent of doing something like this is not to provide an advantage to the provider that would that might get selected, or to compete with the private sector. But in public spaces around the area, you'd have Wi-Fi available for a period of time. So it's not uncommon to see places where you can go, you can log in, and you can have a session that will last for 2 or 3 hours. It does usually provide some flexibility so that if you have some day-long community events, like say the Marion Arts Festival is going on and you've got a lot of concentrated demand, that you can lift that requirement and allow its use during the course of the day. And then some of them have even been set up so that for educational purposes, there are specific logins that say students can use that wouldn't necessarily limit them to that 2-hour minimum for pursuing their studies. That's part of crafting it and developing it. For me, I think when I think about it, you always want to start with your problem statement. What is it you're trying to achieve? What problems are you trying to solve? And then that would lead you into forming the RFP.
So it would be available in public spaces, like the alley, parks, the plaza.
Yeah, you think about those public spaces, Lau Park, Thomas Park, the plaza. It'd be great to enhance it around the library. Just with our current city facilities, we do often have Wi-Fi available that people can log on to, but the reach isn't that great with the equipment that we typically use.
So we would put out an RFP. I think that may be a question on people's minds. So what are we looking at in terms of expense or cost on the city's part for this, or is it just that we provide our fiber optics network?
That would be part of the structure of the RFP. And to me, that would be the advantage of going that route, is we'd ask the potential private sector companies to put their best foot forward and to provide it for us at the lowest or no cost to the community to see what they'd be able to provide.
Okay. I think Renee has a question.
Yeah, so generally, I think that this is a good idea. But in the summary explanation, it says we're seeking additional input from council about whether or not this should become a higher priority. For me, I'd want to see what are the other priorities that, like, what's going to now move down. I feel like we might be looking at this in a vacuum. We very recently has discussed prioritization of things. So I would want to look at this in comparison to everything else and gauge it against that, other than, because it's easy to look at this in isolation and be like, yes, but I want to know if we move this forward, what else might suffer?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Lon, is it necessarily that something else is going to be pushed out of the way or further down the list if this is pursued? I think that may be what Renee's trying to ask, is that does something else get lower priority if this gets pursued?
Yeah, and that's part of the kind of broader discussion with the council on figuring out exactly how does this fit into the work plan, how much of the legwork could our partners do to get ready for it. But we didn't want to get too far down the road with those discussions if the council wasn't going to be supportive at all. So that would be part of developing the whole project plan and calendar and how it would fit. Much like I think the last one that we presented was Councilwoman Gadela had asked for a project plan from Rachel for the agenda management software. We would anticipate doing something similar for this.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this at our Marion Task Force meetings as well, and I think this has been an item in the Imagine Next through the chamber as well. But obviously we know in all the discussions with the schools that there's obviously been a near-term need for more access for Wi-Fi because of the COVID-19. A lot of people not having access. But the reason I think this was quieted down, it hasn't had a lot of more discussion over the last couple of years, is because that need wasn't there until COVID-19, and all of a sudden a lot more people needed it. But I also look at the at least my understanding from the standpoint, the schools have the requirement to provide internet access to all students who do not have it. So if I'm clear on that, I think as we go forward, I think there's still a need, but I'm not sure exactly how broad that need is on a citywide basis. I think it's good to have it, nice to have, but I don't know if it falls in that category of absolutely essential items. So.
Yes, go ahead, Renee.
And just one other thing, if we do move forward on this, or maybe you can answer it now, the fact that 5G is becoming available, would pursuing this be impacted in terms of the hardware required so that we're compatible with 5G once we have access? Because that's going to be gold.
Is that something we need Terrell to answer, or?
Yeah, he will certainly be more qualified to answer it than I am.
So we're talking about a couple different things here, I think. Access to internet for people, students, that's really access in the home. That's not access to public spaces. So I think that comes from the private sector. And as far as 5G, that's also a little bit different, and that's a cellular service, not a local Wi-Fi service. It does impact it, I think, because it becomes what you have users now that have 4G. Well, then if they have 5G devices, they can probably operate maybe 10 or 20 people on that one device, depending on their limit per month. So yeah, I think that does change things.
So Steve mentioned that it was one of the Imagine Next ideas, and so that came through the community as something they wanted to see. I think I think the task force discussions have been about the necessity of it, and that it is something that is needed. From a city marketing standpoint, I think for a city to say we have Wi-Fi, I think it's a positive. It gives them a positive perception of the city. I think most progressive cities, have these types of services. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that doesn't make it essential, but it's something to consider.
It's good to have.
To say that we have widely available Wi-Fi in public places for people that don't have access, and for people that just want to be in a park and using internet. So.
Yeah, I would just add too that keep in mind that the library provides this access, and I know they're not operational right now because of COVID, but that is that essential service for people to be able to get access to Wi-Fi.
Sure.
So again, I think at the parks that's great, but I would consider it more of an amenity than I would consider essential.
Sure. Yeah, it is an amenity, but I think sometimes we assume everyone has access to internet, and it's just not true.
Lon, in your honor, this is Holly again. I appreciate your comment, Mr. Mayor. If I can just add, if there's an opportunity that we see a need, I just want to remind everybody about our mobile hotspot program that we have here at the library. I do want you guys to know that across the Metro Library Network, we have 75 hotspots that circulate. And there's usually 200 people on a waiting list to access those Wi-Fi hotspots across the Metro. We have a long list of Marion residents that are constantly on a waiting list to get access to those. In the interim, if there is an essential need, expanding our Wi-Fi hotspot program would be another option. We would be able to, with support from city funds, be able to add mobile Wi-Fi hotspots to circulate, and we could make those limited to Marion residents only as another option.
Thank you for commenting, because I was right before you jumped in, I was going to ask you what the experience of the library has been with the Wi-Fi from the library.
Sure, it's the #1 demand that we have right now, and as I've shared with City Manager Plucon, it is the #1 phone call that we get on a daily basis. People are desperate to get back into our building to get access to use the computer. Many people use them for their small businesses, not just computers, but printing is becoming a very high demand item as well. We do have a mobile printing option where people can send print jobs from their cell phone into the library. But I would say that we have a very high demand for Wi-Fi. Most surprisingly, maybe for you all, students, not so much as our senior population. So we've been working here at the library with the United Way and the Heritage Agency on Aging to try to keep our senior population connected using Wi-Fi.
So Holly, would you say that it's out of the demand is coming out of necessity or out of desire for an amenity?
A necessity, 100%. I mean, we do have a handful of people who want to take a Wi-Fi hotspot on a vacation with them, so their, kiddos can use Wi-Fi in the car. But over the last few months, sitting in my office, I can see those. I mean, on a daily basis through COVID, we've had pretty average 40 people, because you can come and stand outside the building and use our Wi-Fi. On average, we've had 30 to 40 people daily coming to stand outside a building to access Wi-Fi through the whole COVID response. So I sit here every day and watch people sit outside my window just to access the Wi-Fi.
Okay, that's an important perspective to have. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Holly, would you tell us again how many hotspots the library has and how much a hotspot cost?
Yes, so we have 75 shared hotspots across the Metro Library Network.
Okay.
We have 10 that we call quick pick, meaning when the library is open, it's like first come, first serve. And all of the rest of them are holdable across the Metro Library Network, so they are shared. We regularly have 200 people on a waiting list for those items. A Wi-Fi hotspot, it's demand. The last time we checked, the units themselves are $100 a piece. We don't have to pay a monthly plan for that. And with the program that we have for Verizon, it works out really great because if they get damaged or lost, Verizon replaces them for us for free. But that demand changes a lot like a cell phone plan, Councilman Jensen. So it really just depends right now on what the market is pulling on what we can get them for. Sometimes Verizon runs specials. But we've had a couple of patrons that have reached out and said, hey, I want to buy 10 more Wi-Fi hotspots for you guys. And, it adds up pretty quickly at $100 or $150 a piece.
Okay.
We did recently, just for your information, Mark Campbell from Marion Cares recently reached out to me and asked if I would be open to Marion Cares having a fundraiser to help the library purchase more Wi-Fi hotspots specifically for Marion use, because they are seeing it as a need, and instead of adding it on to their offerings, they'd rather just help augment what the library has access to.
So as I think everybody can see, it's a fairly multifaceted discussion when you start talking about the community-wide Wi-Fi. And this, we haven't even talked about some of the things that organizations have been looking at for pivoting the way that they do events. If events are going to have to focus for the foreseeable future on being less live and more virtual, or a combination of both, having Wi-Fi widely available could be a tool to greatly increase audiences. So it's a convergence of the educational need, the business need, and then our planning needs, particularly in the uptown related to future construction, that are kind of driving the need for having this conversation at this point.
Will, did you have a comment?
Yeah. My question from when we had it before, so it was part of the Imagine 8 process, and it was put into place, and we had the community-wide Wi-Fi, but it went away. And my question is why? What were the issues with it for it to go away? Why didn't it continue?
A combination of hardware, the technology that was available at the time, and then usage. We created it and set it up, and we had issues with people using it to download inappropriate content. The library has some exemptions and protections that the city in general does not. So they are able to provide much broader access to different materials. But after the 4th or 5th letter that we got from the Recording Industry Association of America about people illegally downloading music, the decision was made to idle it at that point.
Lon, if you don't mind my adding, I also think there's some FFC regulation infringements. And I just say this because of how close the library is to neighborhoods. Does that sound familiar to you? When we boost up Wi-Fi in an uptown area like this with residential being so close, there's an infringement on homes. And so what you don't want to happen is the houses that are directly across the street from the library can now use library Wi-Fi instead of purchasing it on their own. That puts us in violation of am I saying that right? FCC regulations. And so there, I think a little bit of that, my understanding from the Imagine 8, they did run into some of that FCC stuff in the uptown district because there's so much residential close to where we would be trying to boost the Wi-Fi.
We got a few calls from businesses that had become dependent on it and were wondering if there was an outage, they were calling our IT people as their tech support, which really wasn't their purpose.
So is the technology today better where we won't have these issues? And Terrell's shaking his head no.
No, but that's the advantage of partnering with a private vendor, is private vendors are geared to be able to do that. They know how to better police the use of it to make sure that you're not infringing upon those issues. And by going through an open RFP process to select a partner, everybody has the chance to compete. They just have to put their best foot forward.
Colette, did you have a comment?
I did. I appreciate Holly's perspective, and it just sounds like it's an access issue. And so how do we continue to provide access? In addition to, I wonder if we had it, how it would impact our local businesses, right? So would folks be more apt to be in the city space and purchasing, right? I just wonder, right, would it increase any kind of sales in our downtown or wherever we would have this access? So those were just a couple of comments and things that I was thinking about regarding it. I'd be curious to see what the cost would be, right? And if I understood what Renee was saying, we only have so much bandwidth, right, as a city to do so many projects. So if we were to elevate this into another project, how would that impact our current projects that we're doing? And that we don't know that at this point, but I think that would be important for us to have that information to make the best informed decision moving forward from my perspective.
Okay. Grant, did you have anything? No. Okay. Will, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and does anyone know if the schools do the hotspots for their students? If they check those out to students? No one.
I don't know.
No, just curious if.
I do know that, if you don't mind my interjecting.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, so the school district, when aware that there is a need, they do provide hotspots to a small population of their students. We have talked along with Lon about, again, how we can continue to augment that from a library perspective. My understanding from both of the Cmar and the Marion Independent School District, that based off of their surveys that they've done, that they currently have their student population covered to the degree that they know it needs to be covered. But again, with the COVID response, I'm sure that's ever changing and probably hard for them to stay on top of it.
So it's really not a student issue, according to Holly, because if they've got it covered for the schools, then it is.
I just think I would be careful with that, Will. I mean, people's financial situation change all the time, you know, and not everybody's going to self-report that to the school. There are some people that, you know, the school district is sending the questionnaires out via email, and people don't have the access to the internet to answer the questions, right? So I can't say for certainty that it's not a student issue. What I can say is that the school district, for the moment, feels confident that they have the coverage, knowing that the Metro Library Network is augmenting that. And I have seen, back when school was still in session, kiddos sitting outside my window accessing with their Marion Independent School District laptops. The other thing is, in the Cmar School District this year, they're going 1-to-1 all the way down to 5th grade. So this year they're expanding the number of students that will have devices, and I don't think they have a good handle on that yet. So I would say, in my opinion, Lon, and I know you've been talking with them too, I think they're keeping a very close eye on it because they expect it to be ever changing. Anytime I see a kiddo sitting outside, I try to scrounge up something and call their parents and see if I can send something home with them, but I only have a finite number of resources.
Renee?
Yeah, I think Holly's point's a great one about being able to reach the people who need it because they might not have a way to get it, but the onus is on the school district. It's law, they have to provide, if the teacher's requiring any kind of computer-based assignment or research assignment, everybody has to have access to the same way to get it. And so the school is responsible. That's why they're providing 1-to-1 computers now. And they would be responsible for all the Wi-Fi student needs if they're going to require students to use it. So for us, I think the school could be, if we were to pursue this, they could be lumped into it. But I think the senior population is what I'm gauging most of the need would go for, because the school's got the kiddos covered.
Okay, go ahead, Colette.
I just would like to add, we're talking about the K-12, but I certainly know our college students absolutely need this access, thinking about what has transpired out at Kirkwood. And we have a lot of our students that don't have access to internet. And so this would provide that in our community as well. So not just the K-12, but folks in college.
Okay, it's been a great discussion. Anything else to add? Go ahead.
I would just say that I would be in favor of moving forward and seeing what we can do for the community.
So if there's concern about, Lon, if there's concern about bandwidth, as some have mentioned, if it's approved to proceed with looking at the options and putting out the RFP, is that a lot of staff time?
At this point, the motion would be to direct staff to prepare the project plan, and that would be kind of the preliminary portion of it, developing the project schedule, seeing how it fits with the other initiatives that we've currently got underway, who it would be assigned to, and then presenting that to the council, and that would have the calendar and everything in it. Okay,
So then at that point, people could decide we can't do this, or
right. Yep.
Okay, does that help everybody? Is that good? Okay. All right. If there's nothing further on this item, we have one more item marked for discussion, which is community development discussion regarding citywide zoning map update. Dave is back.
Real quick on the last item, about 20% of the homes in Marion don't have Wi-Fi access or reliable Wi-Fi access. That's just something I saw in the census data from 2010. So just something else to think about when you're creating a public Wi-Fi system or using the library in schools. So,
okay.
So more homes than I thought it was going to be. Citywide zoning map update. Last year, late October, November, we were going like gangbusters. We had 4 open houses. Surprisingly, really good turnout at those open houses. We were getting, and those open houses did what we wanted them to do. They got the attention of some of the biggest property owners in town and kind of brought them to the table. They ignore us until we actually have open houses, and they don't hear us until we say we're done. They showed up, and we've been having discussions with them for quite a few months. There's probably about 3 or 4 different property owners we're working with, and they own substantial land on it. We got to the point where we've said, hey, the map is done. 99% of it's done. So now they've, instead of going after the map, they started looking at the zoning code itself, the text portion of the code, and looking to say, well, we don't want to do this, this, and this. It's what we do now. the zoning map's taking that away. So we want to amend the code to allow it back in. So we started going through all that. Staff got to a point, it's like, no, this is the zoning map, this is the zoning code. Yes, there's some moving around, fixing a few things. And we got to that point and we were almost done. And then unfortunately, everything shut down. We absolutely need and want 2 open houses, one before Planning and Zoning Commission and another one before City Council. And we want open public meetings. While we think this works well for most business, we feel that the zoning map is it truly is the entire community, and it truly does affect property use. And we want to have open houses without restrictions of 10 people at a time. That does not create great conversation in our opinion. So we're sitting there with a map that's 99% done, got a few tweaks to make, and we got a zoning text changes, about 99% done as well. We're still haggling, I guess, internally about things and just in terms of what we feel and having those discussions. But unfortunately, it's come to a stop until we feel we can have a true open house and true public hearings that people can attend and help participate in discussion. Sensitive mics. So that's where we're at today. We actually feel really good with where everything's at. It's just get the city and state and nation open back up so we can have these meetings, these open house meetings.
Okay, go ahead.
So there's a lot of questions.
When are we anticipating opening? I think I asked this before and we're kind of hinged on what the governor's saying, but what's our plan to open City Hall or the library, any of that?
I think that's for lawn, because that may be changing with whatever the county's there.
We've been coordinating that with Lynn County and Cedar Rapids and other communities in the metro area. And at this point, being fully open to the public, we would not anticipate happening until likely after Labor Day. Lynn County Public Health still has some pretty significant concerns about the level of virus activities. I will qualify that a little bit when it comes to libraries, and Holly can weigh in on that. But they have been communicating about a way that they can really meet the needs of public that needs access to technology by going to an appointment basis. And I think they were looking at around the 20th of July to be able to start rolling that out to the public.
So our next set of council meetings will be like this, and maybe August we would be back to what we were doing. Did I hear that?
After Labor Day, is I think what he said.
Yeah, one of the concerns that we had was that some of our partners were kind of looking at everything in 2-week increments. And so it was a date would be told and then it would get pushed back 2 weeks and then 2 weeks and 2 weeks. And we wanted to be realistic about it and not create those expectations and set a date that was far enough out that we'd give ourselves some opportunity to outperform. So I'm anticipating that we'll use this format through July and see how we're trending at the end of July. If things have stabilized and Lynn County feels more comfortable about moving back, at least to the city council meetings, we could look at a different format.
Okay, and I would just, to your comment, Dave, I hate being held hostage on this project because of the situation. So as soon as we anticipate opening back up for regular meetings, I would love to see that make the
I think Tom, Nicole, and I agree. We want nothing more than to get this off our desk. It takes up a lot of space, and we want it. I'd like to move on as well.
Because we can always cancel. I mean, if it's going to be Labor Day, let's put it on September and then cancel if we have to peel back.
Yeah, with 2 open houses before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, I think we had averaged about 20 for the folks that did go to our open house. I think we averaged about 20 for 4 of them. I think we get about 20 or 30 again. But there's some pretty big. Some of the landowners will show up with a large contingent, and I don't want to be, the best thing about open houses is when you can get 20, 30 people in a room and you can listen to everybody cross-talk and hear what they're saying. And I don't want to lose that ability to do that. So I'm hoping to have those meetings when we can really open up, whether it be mass, not having to worry quite as much about social distancing, whatever that may be. But I think we need that 20, 30 people in a room to really hear everything. And the commissions, they're ready to go. We're doing monthly updates now to them as much as we can. We just did the last one last month, just kind of getting them geared up for it and understanding. I'm sure this month we'll probably take some of the core sections and start talking about them so they're aware of expectations and hopefully address their questions. So again, before we get to the meeting, we don't want to have this large debate at commission or council. We would like to have it to a point where we feel like staff's very confident with what we're proposing. You've seen it and you're very confident with where we're at, minus a few questions we may have. So
Go ahead, Steve.
So my question is, I was at a couple of those meetings a long time ago.
Yeah, October.
I can't remember the dates now, but so if we had these future public meetings, is what you're going to present going to be an updated draft of what was talked about back then? I mean, so if they're going to see a revised version based upon all the comments that have been received during that whole period of time?
Yes. Most of those comments, the ones that were very negative or very concerned, we've met with those people individually already and made some change. Not all of them, but we made a lot of changes based on comments already, and they've seen those changes and they're comfortable with them. I'm not saying they're going to love them, but they're comfortable with the changes we've made.
Okay.
So yeah, the map that you saw back in October will be slight. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find those changes, but they're there. So.
Well, a lot of the discussion I had was not even so much about the map, but like you say, the underlying verbiage on what is now included, what was included before, and what is now included under this new category, where it's, I used to be able to do it before in this piece of land. Now you're not letting me do it. So, so those types of discussions, I think, were some of the key ones that at least I was part of.
Yeah, and that was our first big speed bump after the meetings.
Okay.
They had for example, they had an office designation today, and we gave them an office designation, and they're like, "Hey, we're happy." And it's like, "Okay, but here's the new text."
Now you yanked
and all of a sudden, and all of a sudden,
now I can't do that.
All of a sudden, it's like, "Well, we don't want office."
Right.
And it's like, well, it's what you have today. It's what the comp plan says we have to give you. And so now they want to change the text.
The new text.
The new text that we just adopted last year.
Yeah.
So, and we've been meeting with these 4 or 5 different developers, but they're not going to like where we're at. And so they're either going to challenge the map, and I don't want to challenge the map. I don't want to get here and have this discussion or this fight here in front of council or here in PNC. We're trying to resolve as much as we can.
Okay.
At least get what we can agree on, and they're going to come here with, "Hey, we don't like this," and that's fine. But we'd like to be able to. There's a list of 10 items. Hopefully, they only come with 2. Hopefully, we got to a point where staff's happy, commission's happy, and the developers reasonably happy. And when we get to the council, you guys have fewer items to have to actually address. As our goal.
Okay.
We'll see if that holds. So open up, and we'll get this thing moving again.
Okay. Anything further on that? Thanks for the update. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thanks for everyone for contributing. And I'll note that we do have a closed session on Thursday. Have a good evening. We'll see you on Thursday.